So I want you to picture yourself in basically the most stressful everyday scenario you can possibly imagine.
Oh, I already know where this is going.
Right. Okay. So it's 5:15 p.m. You're in Portland, Oregon.
Prime rush hour.
Exactly. Dead center of the Telecom Crossing Bridge, and you were completely boxed in by traffic. You know the feeling.
Oh, yeah.
Brake lights right in front of you, a grill practically touching your rear bumper. You literally cannot move an inch forward or backward.
Yeah.
You're just sitting there, staring out at the Willamette River, waiting for the gridlock to break. And then the bridge moves.
Yeah, and we should clarify, we aren't just talking about, that standard subtle vibration you feel when a heavy truck drives by on a suspension bridge.
Right. Not just a little shake.
No, the actual deck of the bridge, the reinforced concrete, and the steel right beneath your tires starts to roll.
Which is terrifying.
It is. It begins undulating, physically rippling like an ocean wave rolling right underneath the cars.
And you're completely trapped. Like you can't even abandon your vehicle because the swing is so violent that standing up is, well, it's physically impossible.
You just be thrown to the ground.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're just watching the suspension cables groan, fully aware that this is definitely not an earthquake. This is a deliberate, orchestrated attack.
Which brings us to the mission for today.
Yes, exactly. Welcome to our deep dive into the absolute high-stakes conclusion of the Portland acoustic case from the What Are the Odds files.
Such a crazy case.
It really is. If you're caught up, you've seen Season 2, Episode 4, Destructive Interference. So you already know the plot. You know the behavioral probability unit is currently trapped on that shaking bridge.
Right in the middle of it.
Right. So today, our mission is to really pull apart the actual mechanics of what went down. We're going to analyze the weaponized physics, the real-world acoustic science, and honestly, the brilliant psychological profiling that actually stopped this mass casualty event.
Yeah, because to understand how the team survives this, and it really is a ticking clock to a total structural failure, we first have to look at the sheer audacity of the weapon.
The weapon is wild.
It is, because the unsub, Arthur Vance, he didn't plant explosives along the support columns.
Right.
He didn't, cut any tension wires or anything like that. He simply parked two stolen city maintenance trucks on opposite ends of the Telecom crossing.
Which is brilliant, honestly, because during rush hour, a couple of utility trucks with flashing amber lights, they just look like standard municipal repair work.
Nobody gives them a second glance.
Not a single person. But those trucks are basically Trojan horses. They are packed wall-to-wall with these industrial-grade, low-frequency transducers.
Basically just massive, incredibly powerful subwoofers.
Yeah, giant speakers.
Yeah.
And Vance has them pumping a steady 2.5 hertz sine wave directly into the suspension cables of the bridge.
And that number, that 2.5 hertz, is really the key to the entire physical threat here.
Because it's so low, right?
Exactly. Human hearing generally begins around 20 hertz. Anything lower than that falls into the category of infrasound.
So you don't even hear it.
No, you do not hear a 2.5 hertz wave with your ears at all. You feel it as this kinetic physical force. It's a vibration that totally bypasses your eardrums and just rattles the fluid in your joints.
Ugh, that's awful.
It rattles the steering column of your car, and most importantly, the structural steel of the bridge itself.
Which Agent Cross figures out pretty much immediately, right?
Yeah, Cross identifies right away that Vance isn't just randomly shaking the structure. He's exploiting this terrifying concept in civil engineering called resonant frequency.
Right, resonant frequency. Which, for anyone who needs a refresher, basically means every physical object in the world, from, like, a delicate crystal wine glass to a massive skyscraper, has a natural frequency at which it wants to vibrate.
Yep. Everything has a frequency.
The best analogy I could think of when we were prepping for this deep dive is, think about pushing a kid on a swing.
Oh, that's a really good way to visualize it.
Right. Because if you push the swing at the exact right moment, overmatching its natural rhythm, the swing just goes higher and higher with barely any effort.
The energy build.
Exactly. The unsub is basically pushing the bridge at its exact structural breaking point over and over. And when we were looking into the historical precedent for this, the classic example that always comes up in civil engineering, it's the Tacoma Narrows Bridge collapse of 1940.
Oh, Galloping Gertie.
Yes. Galloping Gertie. If you haven't seen the footage of that collapse, I mean, it is pure nightmare fuel.
It really is. It looks like special effects, but it's totally real.
The bridge is twisting in the wind like a ribbon of wet rubber
Yeah.
before it just completely tears itself apart, crashes into the water.
And Nicomeneros is the perfect visual representation of structural resonance. In that specific case, it was aeroelastic flutter, right? From the wind continuously pushing against the bridge deck.
Matching the frequency perfectly.
Exactly. If an external force matches an object's natural frequency like that, the vibrations don't just, dissipate into the air. They trap the energy and they multiply.
And so Arthur Vance is doing the exact same thing to the Tilcombe crossing, but instead of wind, he's using invisible sonic artillery. He is pushing that structural steel closer and closer to snapping.
And the bridge's own architecture becomes its worst enemy here. The steel suspension cables are absorbing all that compounding energy.
Yeah, Cross actually notes this in his audio log.
He does. He says, if this localized sine wave continues to build, those steel cables are going to snap like rubber bands. The tension will release violently, the deck will collapse, and hundreds of cars are just going to drop straight into the Willamette River.
So the behavioral probability unit is caught right in the middle of this escalating nightmare. Jax, who is basically the tech genius of the team, she locates the digital receiver on the maintenance trucks.
And the obvious instinct for anyone in that scenario is, just physically stop the machine.
Right. Smash the computer, unplug the massive speakers, maybe cut the main power lines. That's what I would try to do.
Sure, but Arthur Vance engineered the system to be completely self-contained and hard-locked. It is essentially an air-gapped system that is heavily armored against physical tampering.
So they can't just pull the plug.
No, Jax realizes pretty quickly she cannot brute force a hack fast enough to power down the transducers before the cables snap.
It's terrifying. You're facing a machine you literally cannot turn off.
Which forces this brilliant, desperate pivot from Agent Cross. This is where the weaponized physics really comes into play.
Yes, I love this part.
Because if they can't stop the sound through software, they have to stop the sound with sound. Cross tells Jax they need to use the principle of destructive interference.
Destructive interference, which, to make it accessible for everyone listening, is essentially active noise cancellation.
Exactly.
To understand how it works on a physical level, if you visualize a standard sound wave traveling through the air, like a squiggly line going up and down on a graph.
Yep, the classic sine wave.
Right. It has peaks, which are the highest points, and troughs, which are the lowest points. Constructive interference is when two waves line up perfectly, peak to peak, combining to make an even bigger, more destructive wave.
And that compounding energy is exactly what is currently tearing the bridge apart.
Exactly. So destructive interference is the exact mathematical opposite. Cross tells Jax they need to generate and play the exact same 2.5 hertz sine wave, but shift its phase exactly 180 degrees.
They need to flip the wave completely upside down.
Right. So whenever the killer's wave goes up to a peak, the behavioral probability unit's wave goes down to a trough.
And crucially, they have to match the amplitude perfectly.
Yes, the amplitude is key.
Right, because amplitude is essentially the raw physical force or the volume of the wave. If the unsub is pushing with 1,000 pounds of acoustic pressure, Jax has to push back with 1,000 pounds of pressure.
Exactly. And when a peak perfectly meets a trough of the exact same amplitude, those physical forces push and pull against each other simultaneously in the air. They literally collide and annihilate each other.
The result is a dead zone. Zero vibration.
Complete silence. Which is just wild to think about. I mean, if you're listening to this deep dive right now wearing high-end noise-canceling headphones, you are using this exact same physics.
Yeah, the tiny microphones on the outside of your headphones listen to, say, the roar of an airplane engine, and the tiny speakers inside instantly play an inverted wave to cancel it out.
Right, but, and this is where I really have to push back a little on the scale of this, that works beautifully inside a 1-inch plastic cup over your ear.
Oh, for sure.
Executing that on the scale of a massive suspension bridge over a huge river, that raises a terrifying logistical issue. The killer's trucks are pumping out industrial, weaponized levels of sound. Jax can't just, play the inverted wave on her smartphone.
No, her phone's speaker isn't going to do anything against that.
She needs massive, city-shaking volume to counter his volume. And her solution. She hijacks Portland's emergency tsunami siren network along the riverfront to broadcast the inverted wave across the city grid.
Which leads to easily the most cinematic, tense sequence of the entire operation. I mean, she is actively rerouting a municipal warning system into a giant acoustic countermeasure.
Okay, but I have to pause here
Yeah.
because watching the source material, this was the one moment that really made me question the science a bit.
Oh, the hardware limitations.
Yeah. Because tsunami sirens are specifically designed to emit these incredibly high-pitched, piercing wails so people can hear them for miles, right?
Right, exactly.
How on earth is Jax forcing a network of high-pitched alarm horns to push out a 2.5 hertz bone-rattling bass wave? Wouldn't that just completely blow out the speakers instantly?
Well, it absolutely pushes the hardware way beyond its intended design, which is why the stakes are so high there.
Okay, so it is a risk.
A huge risk. Jax is essentially using the entire network as a phased array. She isn't just relying on one single siren to hit that low frequency. She is networking dozens of sirens along the river to pulse in a synchronized sequence.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, she's artificially creating a massive low-frequency waveform through sheer brute force volume across multiple points.
That is insane.
It is, and it will almost certainly melt the internal components of those sirens eventually. But she doesn't need it to last forever. She only needs them to hold together long enough to stabilize the bridge and stop the collapse.
But the danger of the math here is just staggering. Because if Jax's phase shift is off by even a fraction of a millisecond,
She doesn't cancel the noise.
worse. If her wave accidentally syncs up with Vance's wave, she broadcasts a citywide constructive interference wave. She would instantly double the destructive force hitting the bridge.
She would literally be the one to snap the cables.
Exactly. The precision required under life and death pressure, with the concrete literally rolling beneath her feet.
Yeah.
It's just unbelievable. And this is why the team is divided during the crisis.
Right, because canceling the sound wave only treats the symptom. The disease is still out there orchestrating the whole thing.
So while Cross and Jax handle the terrifying math of the sound waves, Elias and Hatch are tasked with locating the human element, which begs the question, how do you find one man in a gridlocked metropolitan area?
You look at his behavior. This is where Elias Vance breaks down the psychological profile of the killer, and it's honestly a brilliant deduction of motive.
Because Arthur Vance, and we should note, no relation to Elias Vance, just a coincidence, Arthur doesn't view himself as a mass murderer.
Not at all. He views himself as a misunderstood artist, a maestro, as Elias puts it.
We learned from the case files that Arthur was actually a disgraced former city acoustical engineer.
Yeah, he was fired because his designs for public spaces were dangerously uncompromising.
He prioritized perfect soundscapes over, structural practicality or public safety.
He views infrastructure purely as a medium for sound. So Elias realizes that Vance didn't just plant a bomb and walk away. He orchestrated a symphony of destruction.
A symphony.
Yeah, he used highly precise positioning for those trucks. And what does a maestro desire more than anything else?
Recognition. And the perfect auditory experience of their own masterpiece.
Exact.
Think about a conductor. A conductor doesn't sit down in the orchestra pit with the musicians. Down in the pit, the sound is completely chaotic. You only hear the brass or the strings that are immediately right next to you.
You can't hear the whole piece.
Right. A conductor stands above the orchestra, at the podium, where the acoustics of the hall are specifically designed to perfectly blend all those individual instruments into one unified sound.
So Arthur Vance physically has to be present.
He does. He has to hear the bridge tear itself apart in perfect auditory clarity.
And this is where Elias's behavioral profile intersects perfectly with urban topography. Because city architecture, skyscrapers, concrete walls, glass facades, it reflects and distorts sound.
He creates echoes everywhere.
Right, echoes and acoustic shadows. If Vance wants to hear the pure, unadulterated destruction of his 2.5 hertz wave without the messy echo of the city, he needs an acoustic sweet spot.
He needs an observation deck designed by physics.
Exactly. So Elias pulls a topographical map of the entire Portland riverfront. He actually maps how sound waves would travel outward from those two trucks on the Tillicum crossing, bouncing off the surrounding cityscape.
Doing all that math on the fly.
Yeah, he calculates the angles of reflection off all the nearby high-rises and finds that there is only a single point in the entire city grid where the sound waves perfectly converge in the air without bouncing back on themselves.
Ultimate conductor's podium.
Yep. The 30th floor of an unfinished skyscraper sitting exactly half a mile away from the bridge. Open air, perfect line of sight, and the exact focal point of the acoustic destruction.
It's just brilliant. So you have half of the behavioral probability unit fighting the weapon, the math, and the other half hunting the killer with geography and psychology.
And when Hatch breaches that 30th floor of the high-rise, the visual is chilling.
It really is. He finds Arthur Vance standing right at the open edge of the unfinished concrete floor. And Vance is literally holding a conductor's baton,
Making sweeping motions over the city skyline.
conducting the undulating, screaming metal of the bridge half a mile away. I mean, he is completely lost in his own delusion of grandeur.
And Hatch just makes this epic, desperate, full-body tackle. He takes Vance down to the concrete right before he can trigger what the case file calls his final crescendo.
You know, looking at this whole case, there's such a profound thematic irony to it all.
Oh, absolutely.
Because Arthur Vance was a genius with acoustics. His weapon was mechanically flawless. The trucks, the targeted frequency, the air-gapped digital receivers, he outsmarted the city's infrastructure perfectly.
But his ultimate downfall was his own artistic ego.
Exactly. His psychological need to listen to his masterpiece meant he had to put his physical body in the only acoustic sweet spot in the entire city.
His ego totally dictated his geography.
He practically handed Elias the map to find him, all because he simply couldn't resist the urge to be the maestro.
The weapon was entirely invisible, but his psychological need to witness it made the man himself highly visible.
So true. So, Hatch has Vance pinned on the 30th floor. But down on the river, the clock is still ticking. The cables are groaning, the deck is pitching like a ship at sea.
Hundreds of people are still trapped.
And Jax finally forces the handshake with the tsunami siren network. She hits the broadcast button, sending that perfectly inverted, 180-degree, phase-shifted sound wave echoing right across the riverfront.
And Elias's final log details the resolution of this beautifully. He says, for one terrifying second, it feels like the atmosphere is just going to tear apart.
I can't even imagine the noise.
The noise from the overloaded sirens is absolutely deafening. You have the high decibel roar of the emergency network physically colliding with the deep, bone-rattling thrum of the killer's transducers.
The air pressure must have felt violently heavy.
But then,
Total absolute silence.
a jarring absence of sound and motion. The two massive sound waves physically meet in the air over the Willamette River, and they completely annihilate each other.
The physical force is neutralized instantly.
The undulating concrete just settles back down into a rigid structure. The bridge stops shaking completely. Agent Cross's structural physics and Jax's split-second engineering literally save the lives of every single person trapped in that gridlock.
A major disaster averted by pure mathematics and a hijacked emergency siren. It's just breathtaking.
It is.
But we absolutely have to talk about the poetic justice of the aftermath here.
Oh, Elias's final play.
Yes, because Arthur Vance obviously survives the tackle by Hatch. He is taken into federal custody. But Elias Vance pulls some significant strings regarding his exact cell placement.
He ensures the punishment perfectly fits the pathology of the crime.
He does. Elias mandates that Arthur Vance is placed in a very specific wing of a federal facility that is designed with absolute soundproofing.
He is put into solitary confinement in an anechoic chamber.
Which is, an anechoic chamber is basically a room designed to completely absorb reflections of either sound or electromagnetic waves.
They're usually lined with those thick foam wedges, right?
Yeah, exactly. On the walls, the ceiling, the floor. They absorb 99.9% of all sound. It creates a completely dead acoustic zone.
Which is terrifying in its own right.
Being inside one for even a few minutes is deeply unsettling for a normal person. Without any background noise at all, your ears strain to hear something, literally anything.
You start hearing your own body.
You do. You start to hear the blood pumping through your own head, the grinding of your own joints when you move. Prolonged exposure can actually cause hallucinations because the brain desperately tries to fill the auditory void.
So for a man whose entire life, his ego and his horrific crimes were built entirely around the majesty and control of sound,
It is the ultimate deprivation.
to be surrounded by nothing but the horrifying silence of his own internal biology forever.
As Elias notes in his final log, he will never hear a symphony again.
It is a chillingly fitting end.
It really is.
Yeah.
And, stepping back from the case, it leaves you with this really profound sense of the invisible forces around us.
Oh, definitely.
Because the physical world is constantly humming. We walk through a massive, unseen ocean of intersecting frequencies and waves every single day.
We don't even think about it.
Never. You have Wi-Fi signals passing right through the walls of your house. You have radio waves bouncing off the atmosphere. You have the structural vibrations of subway cars rolling deep underground, traveling right up through the concrete foundations of the buildings we work in.
We are completely immersed in this web of physical forces.
passing right through our bodies. And 99% of the time, we are entirely unaware of it.
It makes you wonder how much raw power is quietly humming just out of sight.
Right. Just waiting for someone to find the right frequency.
It certainly changes the way you look at the architecture of the city around you, that's for sure.
It absolutely does. But just as the Behavioral Probability Unit closes the book on the weaponized acoustics of Portland, they are immediately pulled into an anomaly that completely defies all established physics.
There's always another case.
Always. Jax hands Elias a file, right as they are packing up their gear. What are the odds a man falls upward and dies hitting his own ceiling?
That is just wild.
Right. The Behavioral Probability Unit is heading to Marfa, Texas, to investigate a localized gravity inversion. Hold on tight. We'll see you next time.